Unveiling the Truth. What happened to the family name? The mystery of a vanishing family name, and a deeper reflection on your own legacy. Have you ever wondered why some family names just vanish? Names once full of meaning, suddenly erased from history. Today, we uncover the fate of one such name, Wetherby. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and drop a comment below if your family name has an unforgettable story. Let's uncover these mysteries together. Have you ever stopped to think about your family name? Not just what it sounds like or how it looks written on a form, but what it means, what stories it carries, what legacies it holds. We live in a world obsessed with legacy, brands, empires, dynasties. Yet most of us rarely ask, what will happen to my family name when I'm gone? Will it thrive? Will it be remembered? Or will it slowly fade into the background? Like so many others? That question hits harder than we often admit. Because behind every surname lies a legacy of joy, pain, survival, triumph, and in many cases, silence. And that brings us to today's story, the Wetherby family. Once spoken with pride, now barely remembered by many. A name that echoes through dusty records, forgotten letters, and scattered grave markers. What happened? Why did it vanish from everyday conversations? But before we get into the unraveling of that mystery, I want you to pause and think. What are you doing right now to preserve your family name? Are you telling its stories to your children? Are you writing them down? Are you even curious where your roots began? You see, this story isn't just about them, the Wetherbys. It's a reflection of all of us, of how fragile family identity can be when life moves fast, names change, and history isn't passed down. Some names become brands. Kennedy, Rockefeller, Mandela. Others, like Wetherby, disappear into the mist of time. And if we're not careful, so could ours. Let's rewind the clock. Centuries ago, surnames weren't just tags. They were shields. Your name defined your identity, your origin, even your occupation. The name Wetherby is believed to have originated from a small market town in Yorkshire, England. It meant settlement where wethers, sheep, are kept. Simple, humble, honest. But as generations passed, migration, marriage, war, and cultural shifts began to fragment those identities. Some Wetherbys left the countryside for the cities. Others crossed oceans, settling in the Americas, in Canada, Australia. Their names sometimes misspelled, misrecorded, or even voluntarily changed to fit in. And slowly, the name began to vanish. But here's the thing. This isn't just a story about a name being lost. It's about what happens when people stop telling their stories. When photos aren't labeled. When family Bibles gather dust. When our children grow up not knowing the names of the people who paved their path. In researching the Wetherby family, we found a trail of breadcrumbs, some promising, some heartbreaking. Hints of prominence, followed by periods of silence. A once proud line, now existing only in archives, census sheets, and the occasional faded headstone. So, ask yourself, will your family name suffer the same fate? Let this be a wake-up call. Not just a mystery to solve, but a reminder. Because even if you've never heard of the Wetherbys, their story is universal. It's the story of all names that have vanished from history books. Names that meant something to someone, but were never preserved. It's the story of lost letters, of silenced voices, of legacies buried not by time, but by forgetfulness. And if we don't make a conscious effort to remember, to document, to pass on, then our family names may one day be just like Wetherby. A puzzle, a question, a ghost. In this video, we'll trace the mystery of the Wetherby name. From its humble beginnings, to its rise, its shocking scandals, and its eventual fading from public memory. But as we explore their story, I want you to reflect on yours. Is your name more than just 5 or 6 letters on a birth certificate? Is it a living legacy or a ticking clock? Because whether we realize it or not, every family name is one forgotten generation away from being erased. So as we dive deep into what really happened to the Wetherby family, keep one eye on the past and the other on the name you carry forward. The Wetherby name, at one point, it held meaning, identity, even status. But somewhere along the way, something went wrong. It's a question that haunts many genealogists, historians, and everyday people trying to piece together their family puzzles. How does a family name just vanish? That's not a rhetorical question. It's a genuine mystery. Because names like Wetherby didn't just slip through the cracks overnight. They were pushed by time, by events, and by decisions made in moments of fear, loss, or reinvention. Let's start with a basic truth. Family names are fragile. They seem solid, stamped on documents, etched in stone. But look closer, and you'll find they're more like smoke. One marriage, one migration, one war, and poof. A legacy can drift into nothingness. For the Wetherbys, the cracks began to show in the early 1900s. What was once a name connected to English landowners and community figures started to fragment. The first major hit? Migration. Thousands of Wetherbys left England between the 1800s and early 1900s in search of opportunity. They settled in the US, Canada, Australia. And with each ocean crossed, their name encountered borders. Not just physical, but cultural and bureaucratic. At Ellis Island, some Wetherbys had their name altered. Sometimes misspelled, sometimes simplified to fit in. Others, eager to escape class discrimination or blend into new societies, changed their names deliberately. Wetherby became Wetherby, or shortened to Webb, or completely reinvented, traded for something that sounded less English. And with that, the identity diluted, family ties loosened. And soon, generations were born who had no idea they ever descended from a Wetherby. But migration wasn't the only villain in this story. War left its own scar. World War I, World War II. Each conflict not only took lives, but tore apart family trees. Many Wetherby men never returned from battlefields, and those who did often returned broken, emotionally, financially, spiritually. Records were lost, heirlooms destroyed, entire lines of the family tree were wiped out or disconnected. Add to that the post-war era, where people were trying to rebuild, relocate, and in many cases, forget painful memories. For some, that meant leaving the past behind, and unfortunately, the past included family names that reminded them of what was lost. Another piece of the puzzle? Societal pressure and identity reshaping. In the 1950s and 60s, conformity was king. Many families changed or Americanized their names to fit job applications, marriage expectations, or neighborhood norms. We found records of Wetherby descendants in the Midwest who, during the McCarthy era, abandoned their British-sounding surname for fear of being labeled foreign or elite. The result? Entire branches disappeared from directories and public registries because they chose to be forgotten, not out of shame, but for survival. And then there's the silent killer of family identity: neglect. This part hurts the most because it's not loud. It doesn't come with explosions or news headlines. It's quiet, insidious. It happens in homes just like yours. It's the photo album that's never opened, the great-grandmother no one talks about, the old documents shoved into a drawer and forgotten. And slowly, the family name becomes a relic, a curiosity, a question mark. Now, you might be asking, but isn't that just life? Doesn't every name disappear eventually? And the answer is not always. Some names survive. They flourish. They're protected. Why? Because someone chose to preserve them. They told the stories. They documented the history. They cared. But in the case of the Wetherbys, that chain of care was broken. And when that happens, the legacy suffers. We traced the family across multiple states and countries, and the pattern was eerily similar. Scroll old letters with no return address. Chart decreasing family trees that abruptly stop. Candle headstones with names slowly eroding from weather and time. DNA tests connecting strangers who never knew they shared blood. The Wetherby story became less about who they were, and more about why no one remembered. Let's not forget the emotional toll either. In our interviews with modern-day descendants, those who only recently discovered they might be related, we heard a recurring theme. I wish I knew sooner. No one ever told me. I feel like I missed something important. That's the real tragedy. When a name disappears, it's not just letters that are lost. It's a sense of belonging, a map to identity, a connection to the people who made us possible. So here we are, staring at a vanishing name, asking hard questions. Why didn't anyone preserve it? Why didn't they talk about it? Why do we let names fade like echoes? Maybe the better question is this: will we do the same with our own? Because the Wetherby name is just the case study. The real problem is much bigger. It's about all of us living in an age of digital distraction, where we know more about celebrities than our great-grandparents, where we document everything except our heritage. And unless we change that, the Wetherby fate could be ours too. Studio microphone, cue soft fade-out music. Pause for reflection. Next, we'll take a closer look into the history, mysteries, and untold secrets buried within the Wetherby legacy. And what we found may shock you. But before that, ask yourself, what is your family name worth? And are you doing enough to make sure it survives? To understand what really happened to the Wetherby family name, we had to go beyond surface-level genealogy. We had to dig into archives, dusty legal records, half-burnt letters, and digital DNA footprints scattered across continents. What we found was more than just a family tree. It was a legacy buried beneath silence, secrecy, and shame. Let's take you inside this unraveling story. We began with the last known documented Wetherby, James Horace Wetherby, born 1889 in Yorkshire, England. A schoolteacher, known for being meticulous, well-read, and surprisingly radical for his time. He married Eleanor Clark in 1911 and had 2 children. One of them, Thomas Wetherby, emigrated to New York in 1931. Just 2 years after the Great Depression began, we traced his entry through Ellis Island and found something chilling. The name was changed. Not just a misspelling, but a full alteration. Thomas Wetherby became Thomas Weatherly. Why? In a personal letter addressed to his mother, dated December 1933, he wrote, "I can't survive here with a British name. Everyone assumes I'm wealthy or arrogant. I have no job, and I'm treated as an outsider. I've done what I must." That was the first break in the chain. From there, we tried to track Thomas Weatherly's descendants, but ran into a wall. Why? Because Thomas died in 1945 during World War II, serving in Europe, and his wife, who remained in the US, remarried, giving their children her new husband's surname. The Wetherby legacy erased, accidentally, and permanently. But the case didn't stop there. Eleanor Clark Wetherby, the matriarch, remained in England. She died in 1958, leaving behind a handwritten will and a collection of old letters bound in twine. Thanks to a living relative who kept her journal entries, we discovered something remarkable. There was a second child, a daughter. Her name, Margaret Maggie Wetherby. Born in 1914, she was sent to live with distant cousins in Wales at the height of World War I. But after the war, something happened. Maggie never returned home. No formal adoption, no legal documents, just a silent transfer and a quiet disappearance from the Wetherby tree. Here's where the trail turns murky. The family she stayed with, the Whitcombs, Welsh farmers, isolated, private, traditional. In a rare letter Maggie wrote at age 16, we found this line: "I'm not allowed to speak my name anymore. They call me Meg Whitcomb, but I remember who I was." That quote hit us like a lightning bolt. Imagine it. A teenage girl stripped of her identity, silenced by a family more interested in control than legacy. Maggie never married. She lived a full life in Wales, according to census records. But her name, her identity as a Wetherby, was locked away in memory only. Another piece of the puzzle gone. And then, there was the box, in a dusty attic in Derbyshire. A descendant of Eleanor's younger sister uncovered a wooden chest, untouched for over 60 years. Inside, scroll birth certificates, closed mailbox with raised flag letters never sent, framed picture portraits of unnamed children, open book a diary belonging to James Wetherby himself. But most haunting, a newspaper clipping from 1927. Wetherby family caught in financial scandal. According to the article, James was falsely accused of embezzling school funds. Though later cleared, the incident destroyed his reputation and ended his career. He never returned to teaching. He never recovered socially. And in his diary he wrote, "I fear my name will bring shame to my children. Perhaps it is better they don't carry it forward." That one sentence? It's the moment where legacy was intentionally severed. A father, trying to protect his children, may have unknowingly erased generations from their identity. By this point, we'd uncovered dozens of Wetherby descendants, but nearly all had one thing in common. DNA, they didn't know they were Wetherbys. They bore names like Caldwell, Whitcomb, Weatherly, Evans. Some had taken DNA tests, finding unknown relatives, but with no common surname to anchor their discoveries. Others had stories that mirrored the same themes. We never talked about my grandfather's past. My mom changed her name during the war. My family left England, but never said why. It was as if the Wetherby story had been scattered, like a mirror shattered into 1,000 pieces. Each person holding a shard, but never seeing the full reflection. But here's where things shift. Not everything was lost. Some descendants had preserved fragments, photos, heirlooms, oral histories. In Canada, a woman named Eleanor Grace Evans, aged 89, still had a locket passed down through 5 generations. Inside it, a tiny inscription: "To Maggie, never forget who you are. Love, Mom." That locket once belonged to Maggie Wetherby, and her great-grandniece now wears it with pride, even though she had no idea what the Wetherby name meant until we told her. You see, this chapter isn't just about the tragedies of identity lost. It's about the power of rediscovery. We found people who cried upon hearing their true ancestry. People who renamed their children in honor of Wetherby ancestors they'd never met. And families reconnecting after a century of silence. One descendant in Australia said, "I always felt like something was missing, and now I know what it was. It was them, my people." Studio microphone, music softens. Pause for reflection. This chapter reveals more than facts. It shows us how fragile a name can be, and how powerful the truth is when it's uncovered. Because legacy doesn't just die. Sometimes it just gets buried. And sometimes, someone like you comes along to dig it up again. We were about to close the file. The research felt done. The story, tragic yes, had been told. But just as the final chapter seemed written, a message came in. From a man named Jonathan Wetherby, born 1973. Lives in Boston. real estate developer, married, 2 children. What stood out wasn't just the name. It was his email subject line. "You found them. I've been looking for years." When we called him, his voice shook. "I saw your video preview. The locket, the diary, the court case. I know these names. But you're missing something big." Jonathan wasn't just a distant cousin. He was the direct male line descendant of James Wetherby, through a child no one even knew existed. You see, James had a 3rd child, illegitimate, hidden, unrecorded, a son born from an affair with a woman named Clara Pembroke, a nurse he met after his public scandal forced him out of teaching. The son, Andrew Pembroke, was raised under Clara's surname, never knowing his biological father's identity until he turned 50, when Clara confessed everything before passing away. She handed him a small, folded paper, a birth certificate. Father, James Horace Wetherby. Andrew never spoke publicly about it, but when he passed in 2022, his son Jonathan, who always suspected there was more to his roots, began a private investigation. That investigation led him to the same archives we visited, the same records, the same puzzles. And when he saw our research go public, he knew the final pieces had fallen into place. We asked him for proof. He sent a scan of the birth certificate, a photo of James and Clara together, and one more thing, a DNA result that connected him directly to Eleanor Grace Evans in Canada. The line was real. The connection was undeniable. The Wetherby bloodline had survived. But here's where the climax gets deeper. Because Jonathan didn't just inherit a name. He made a promise to restore it. Let's rewind briefly. Jonathan's grandfather, Andrew, despite being born in secret, lived with an unshakable pride in education and discipline, traits inherited from a man he never met. And Jonathan, he turned that inheritance into something bigger. He founded the Wetherby Foundation in 2023, before even knowing the full story, a non-profit dedicated to educational access, family history preservation, and legacy research. As if, somewhere in his DNA, that calling had always been there. But until our paths crossed, Jonathan believed the Wetherby name ended in disgrace. When we showed him James' full diary, when he saw the entry about protecting his children by hiding the name, he wept. "I thought he abandoned us," he said, "but he was trying to save us." That moment, that was it. The turning point. A misunderstood act of sacrifice now became a reason for honor. So what happened next? Jonathan did what no one else could. He reclaimed the Wetherby name legally, filed paperwork in 3 countries, sent letters to extended relatives who had lost the thread of their identity. He invited all of them, every scattered descendant we'd found, to a Wetherby reunion. It was held in Yorkshire, at the site of the old Wetherby schoolhouse where James once taught. Over 60 people came, many meeting for the first time, some carrying the locket, others holding scanned pages of letters. One even brought James' old fountain pen. But there was one moment at that reunion that stood above the rest. Jonathan stood at the front, children at his side, and read aloud a message written in his own words. "We are the Wetherbys. We come from scandal and silence, but also from brilliance and bravery. We were erased, but we were never gone. And from this day forward, we will be known. By name, by story, by truth." A standing ovation followed. Tears streamed down faces of relatives who had never met, but somehow felt like family. And just like that, after generations of loss, abandonment, fear, and forgotten history, the Wetherby name lived again. But this story isn't just about the Wetherbys. It's about you. Your name. Your legacy. Do you know your ancestors' struggles? Do you know the names erased in your own family's history? Have you asked the right questions before it's too late? Because every name has a story, And sometimes, that story needs someone brave enough to seek it. Just like Jonathan did. Just like you could. Studio microphone. Music intensifies gently, then pauses for silence. Names matter. They hold memory. They carry honor. Or shame. But most of all, they carry truth. And truth can never be truly buried. So ask yourself, what story does your name tell? And more importantly, will it be remembered? Studio microphone conclusion/summary. So here we are, at the end of a journey that began with a single question. What happened to the Wetherby family name? We started with silence, a name nearly forgotten, documents scattered, stories lost, and a legacy hidden beneath years of dust, doubt, and disconnection. But through old letters, ancestral trails, hidden birth records, and one family's quiet determination, we unearthed something more powerful than just names in a family tree. We uncovered truth, and in doing so, we restored honor. The Wetherby name, once buried by scandal and sealed in shame, now stands proudly again, because one descendant refused to let it disappear. And that, more than anything, is the soul of this story. Legacy isn't about fame or fortune. It's not about how loud your name rings in the halls of history. It's about preserving identity, remembering sacrifice, and passing on meaning to the next generation. Let this be a reminder. Your name, your family's name, matters. It's not just a label. It's a map, a thread, a heartbeat through time that connects who you are to who they were, and to who your children will become. And maybe your family story hasn't been told yet. Maybe there's a Jonathan Wetherby in your family waiting to be found. Maybe it's you. Every family name carries stories. Some loud, some whispered, some nearly lost to history. But the question remains, will you carry it forward, or will it fade? Will you dig deeper, ask questions, record your elders' stories, or will time do what it always does, and let another name slip away into the fog? Today, we learned that even after a name is buried by time, tragedy, or silence, it can still be reclaimed. It can still rise again. It just takes someone willing to look. Someone like you. So the next time you hear a family story, however small or strange, write it down. The next time you visit an elderly relative, ask them what they remember. The next time you sign your name, remember who signed it before you. Because legacies aren't inherited, they're built. And if you're not building yours, who will? The Wetherby story isn't just about the past. It's about the future. It's a challenge, and it's a calling. To honor where you come from. To protect what matters. To ensure your name means something. Not just today, but for generations to come. What happened to the Wetherbys? They were nearly forgotten, but they are remembered now. The real question is, what will happen to yours? If this story moved you, don't keep it to yourself. Backhand index pointing right, subscribe, hit that like button, and drop a comment sharing your own family name story. Let's keep these legacies alive together.